Hi everybody, it's Terry Ryder of Hotspotting, and I'm here today with Kate Hill from Advisable. Kate and Advisable are on our panel of partners, and we often do webinars with Kate talking about market issues. But today we're here to talk about something a little bit different because Kate is a very clever person and she's written a very, very good book with the help of her co-author, Nicola McDougall. And it's called The Female Investor, Creating Wealth, Security and Freedom Through Property. So, Kate, why don't we have a chat about the process of this book, why this book, and I guess the obvious first question is what's different for a female investor? Why a book especially for female investors?
Yes. Hello, Terry. Thank you very much for having me on board. I'm delighted to be here and talk about this. I do need to, I guess, say right from the beginning that we do have a certain motivation, obviously, for targeting women specifically, but we don't want to alienate all our lovely male friends and colleagues and investors out there. So while the whole thing is meant to be a rallying cry, if you like, for women to be motivated to do this, the principles within apply to male and females alike. Okay, so the principles of the investment don't apply to just women. So, but the motivation really is that, unfortunately, many women grow up in an environment where they're just not encouraged to take care of themselves financially and independently. Maybe that's changing as generations evolve, but there are some really shocking facts out there that come from Australian government research. Sort of one in three Australian women, and I know it's exactly the same in the UK, in the US, and New Zealand, and I'm sure in many other non-English speaking parts of the world too. But 1 in 3 women retire with no superannuation, no pension funding at all. They're very reliant on state pensions. Those who do manage to save, they still wind up with less than 50% of their male counterparts. And the average female, that's quite drastic when you think about it. A third of women don't. But the average female super balance is 17.5% less than the male counterparts.
And we still have a situation, don't we, where women are still paid less than men for the same job in many instances. The life cycle for many women is that having children can interrupt their career, and
it does.
And so the whole path to financial independence is still more difficult for women.
Yes, absolutely. So you've got there was a recent government research. I've forgotten the actual title of it, but it's something like the Economic Insight Paper or the Women's Economic Insight Paper into Retirement, or something like that. It came from not that long ago, about 2 years ago. And from when they're in their late 20s onwards, so you really haven't probably been in your full-time working life for that long, women are already on the back foot, and a lot of that is just the gender pay gap. And then they partner up, they might have a child or two, they're on mat leave, they are out of that full-time working environment for many years. They come back to generally part-time work. And CoreLogic have done a lot of really good research on this too. I was talking to Eliza Owen quite recently about this very thing. They did a really interesting research paper about women in property. I encourage everyone out there to go and have a look at that. And women then come back into the workforce often as part-time workers. So in terms of super, it's well below what men's is, quite frankly. So
the process that you outline in the book, and you do take reader on a complete journey of the whole process from beginning to end. The process for women isn't necessarily any different. It's just, as you say, a rallying cry to perhaps alert women to the possibilities that are there. Yes. And one of the things I really like about this book is that there's lots of case studies.
Yes.
And there's all sorts of interesting little insights to individuals who've been on this journey, including some of the not so positive stories.
That's right. Look, so as an example, so we have the case studies here that I can show you. There's lots of these kind of hints and tips. Yes. and they're real, right? Like you say, so the case studies are all clients that I've worked with, chosen for their awesomeness and inspiring stories.
Well, one I thought was particularly inspiring was a woman called Rosie, who's apparently got a teenage child, solo parent, teenage child with autism.
Yes.
And has managed to accumulate 13 investment properties.
She's amazing. Yeah. And I've known her for many years. We've been on that journey together for a long time. And I've really seen her thrive throughout her years of building that portfolio. She was inspirational to me, just watching her motivation, knowing that she needed to do this, not rely on being partnered up, and now she is in a position where a lot of those properties are most definitely paying for themselves. They're providing an income, and she's not she has choices in life, and she knows that she's going to be okay later on. She's still, I think she's just turned 50 odd. Don't hate me. So if I've got that wrong out there, but yeah, no, I think she's kind of my age. Yeah, she's awesome.
It sounds like the process of taking this on and being very successful is very empowering for someone like that.
Absolutely. I also interviewed one of the other case stories from the book, Hayley, recently for the podcast, which I also am going to shamelessly plug. Everyone head for that. And she said exactly that having just one it's still fantastic. Just the one investment property at the moment it's a confidence booster. It is empowering on a level that she's never experienced, knowing that property, that asset is sitting there in the background, minding its own business. There's not a lot of maintenance. It's a set and forget kind of asset. And it just gives her that sleep at night factor, knowing that is out there for her later on in life. She said it's huge. Yeah.
Okay. So the case studies, I found one of the really great parts about this book, because it reinforces the principles that they're espousing. But the book does take people from start to finish, the basic principles of property investment, developing a strategy, how to do research, how to choose location. And there is a lot to know. And what I find when I do a lot of webinars and live Q&As, and I find that the questions I get from people out there wanting to be investors is that the average punter doesn't really know very much about this. They're really flying blind. So a book like this, I think, can really help people by assuming a low level of knowledge to begin with and taking them through the whole process.
Thank you for saying that. That's exactly what we intended. And you do have to strike a bit of a balance between not assuming that everybody knows that the terminology or the lingo that we use, but also not treating people like idiots, but you do want to explain and make it easier for people to understand. And again, another little insight and personal story. I actually spoke to a lady 2 days ago who picked this book up at Sydney Airport, literally, no word of a lie, emailed us because she'd read the book like in 24 hours. She's in her 30s, and she said exactly that it just explained things really simply, which is exactly what she needed. It inspired her. It motivated her to go, I actually can do this. It's in the early parts of the book. That's exactly what we want to do, to encourage, to motivate, to inspire, and to say, yes, there's a lot to think about, but you absolutely need to do this. And if you sort of follow these basic steps, then you're doing a lot to provide for yourself.
And what I like about the book, amongst many things that I like about the book, is that it's very readable. It's well written, and it's nicely structured. So, it's logical step by step, but it's a book you can go back to and refer to a particular chapter. If you want to find out a little bit more about how do I research or how do I choose location, you can find that chapter and just focus on that.
Yeah. And look, I mean, there's definitely, there were definitely I guess, sections and chapters that had to be culled quite significantly, because as you can imagine, chapters 4 and 5, which are the location as in where to buy and then what to buy in chapter 5, I could have written War and Peace Part 4, Terry, because there is a lot to say, right? And I have obviously I've bought hundreds of properties for clients, so I've got a lot of case stories just from that. But I'm not writing War and Peace Part 4. That can be a whole book just by itself, So it's meant to be, I guess, a beginning of an education of the process. I think it's definitely worth reading a couple of times. I know I'm going to say that sounds really self-promotional, but to fully understand that process, that's exactly what we wanted to do, to sort of have somebody start right from the beginning. Where do I start? What do I do? Hence also the to-do lists, right? So that you have at the end of every chapter, furiously trying to find one, at the end of every chapter, you have these to-do lists here that give you a bit of an overview of what you've just read. And it's exactly that. It's a to-do list. So you know who you need to talk to, what you need to do next, and take your time with it. Obviously, these are very important decisions that you're making from, right from the team that you're working with to your advisors, accountants, all those other people, maybe downloading one of your reports or two when it comes to that location choice. And we all know your reports are second to none, Terry. So,
of course.
Of course. So it is meant to be step by step. I'm hoping detailed enough without sending everybody to sleep.
Yeah.
But having it in a logical order. Yeah.
And part of the book is devoted to dealing with many of the myths and misconceptions that are out there about real estate, about locations, about where it's best to be. And there's also a section I noticed where it's best to get advice, and making the point that a lot of people get advice from family members about locations, which quite often means that they're not getting knowledge, they're getting prejudice.
And in fairness, again, to come to the defense of all those family members, it's often very well-meaning advice, right? But it's not advice coming from the side of an expert in the field. It's just coming from somebody who might love and care about you and is fearful for you on your behalf, right? A lot of us and a lot of people I talk to have that. And they are often more likely to trust somebody that they know and love rather than an expert or, a professional that they might not have come across before. But that's a very common thing.
There are a lot of perceptions about particular locations that might somehow have a stigma, and sometimes that stigma may have been outgrown. Maybe it's 10 or 20 years out of date, and that can put people off buying in areas that are very worthy places to buy.
Yes, and I think that has been put to the test, and that the myth has been put to the test in the past couple of years. Absolutely, more so than ever. And I will admit completely freely that I'm guilty of that too. There's sometimes I've been in this game for a fair few years now, and there'll be areas that at the beginning did perhaps not so sure that I've had to do a bit of hang on a minute, things like that change over the course of 15 years, Kate, and we definitely go back and revisit those kind of areas so that you are not making really important investment decisions based on very outdated emotional reactions, or like you said earlier, emotional reactions from other people who are not expert property advisors. And you might miss out on some real stellar capital growth because somebody says, it's a bit dodgy, when it actually might have been 15 years ago, but no, not anymore.
Yeah. Well, I've often said to people, ugly real estate grows in value too. And sometimes it grows very well in value, because what people might perceive as ugly real estate, because it's down market, a lot of demand goes to the places because that's where people can afford.
Absolutely.
And as long as those locations have good amenities, and they often do, the basic infrastructure that people need, you couple that with affordability and proximity to desirable things like where they might work,
Mm.
becomes very attractive to people.
Absolutely.
Notwithstanding the stigma that some people might have for it.
Yes, that's right. And I think, again, coming back to, you know, that really having been borne out in the last couple of years, there's areas in you know, all over the country really, but there's areas where we are seeing this massive supply issue, huge demand, and there are auctions happening in areas that it's even blowing my mind, going, oh my God, I can't believe there's actually auctions happening here, because it's just such a frenzy, because those areas are in demand for all those reasons that you've just stated. Yeah. It's shocked even me. Yeah.
Okay, so the book's been out and about for a little while now.
Couple of weeks, couple of weeks. Yeah.
What sort of feedback you're getting? You mentioned one person who made contact was very excited.
Do you know what? It was Nicola and I both shed a little tear, actually, because it was such a lovely email, and it hit the target audience, which, to be fair, is any female, really. It's not sort of age specific or anything, but anyone who is keen to sort of do this. But this lady was, like I said, sort of early, sort of mid 30s, very early 30s, was sort of thinking about it, but picked up the book and went, right, I can absolutely do this. I need to do this. And it motivated, inspired, and gave her the confidence to then email us and tell us that. How fantastic is that? But to then start to put this plan in place, which is why I was talking to her a couple of days ago, to start, you know, that process with her and give her some advice and et cetera, et cetera. So we've had a few communications like that from people. The sales figures so far are very encouraging, which is great. So yeah, very positive so far. It's very early days.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of reasons to want to publish a book, you know, desire to help people, maybe earn a little bit of money, but also I imagine it'll be a great advertisement for your business as well.
Well, yeah, look, it's the other thing that we do, part of our pitch, I guess, and that we do sort of say quite openly, is that there are a lot of people like me who publish books, but a lot of those are purely intended to market, you know, the promotional products for that person's business. Nicola and I made a real conscious decision to try not to do that. Right. So, yes, I am a qualified property investment advisor. Yes, I'm a buyer's agent. I have my own business. But that's how I've been doing and getting my experience, and being a personal, an investor myself personally as well. But the book is really not intended to promote my business. It's intended to, that's going to be a very pleasant side effect. Thank you very much. But it is there to if Nicola and I both said, if we can just turn one person's life around in terms of them providing for themselves later on in life, job done. And literally we did that a few days ago by getting that email. That is exactly what we wanted. We want to create a community, have open the conversation around this, not have it a taboo subject around what do you earn, what have you got in super, let's talk about it, not have it this taboo and hidden subject. We need to talk about it. So yes, pleasant side effect, but was certainly not, I don't think my business isn't mentioned anywhere. You'd have to hunt it down.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's another one that makes us slightly different, right? Because it's not a promotional tool for the business.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I've read the book. Here it is.
Thank you.
And I think that's a book for anybody who's interested in property investment. You don't have to be female to get value from this book. There's
very pink though, right? But anyway.
Very true. But there's so much good practical advice and information in this book on how to go about the process of property investment. It's a very it's a handbook that I think people, they'll read it, but they'll keep it close by and refer to it as they go through the process.
Yeah. And thank you for saying that. And again, I guess I just want to stress, I've been talking about that 30-year-old, the target audience, anyone out there listening, is really any woman essentially of any age who has an interest in this subject, right? You don't have to be in your 30s. I have a lot of lady or female clients who come after a relationship breakdown, or they find themselves widowed, and need to now start thinking about this by themselves, which is very sad, but also they're in that headspace to do that, right? So it's professional young women, it's more mature women, it's, like I said, women who are maybe divorced, separated, widowed. You don't have to be in your 30s to start this. So that's,
and the ideal of someone starts young, in their 20s perhaps, but it's never too late to get started.
No, absolutely not. No, absolutely not.
All right. Well, thanks, Kate. It's been really good to talk about this project. It's a great product. Congratulations on getting that done. I've written some books, and I know that's an awful lot of work. And you often think that when you get to the end of the writing process, the work is done, but it's only just beginning, because the publication process is just as time-consuming and challenging.
But worth, literally, and I know it sounds corny and a cliche, but worth every minute spent on it when you get emails like we did and feedback like we are, going, I'm totally going to do this, because you're changing someone's life. They might not know that right now, but in 20 years' time, they're going to be, thank God I did that. And honestly, that makes it all worthwall. That's why we did it.
So anybody wants to get a copy of Female Investor, I assume it's in bookshops.
Bookshops, Sydney Airport, massive stack of books in Sydney Airport. Also for sale in America as well. Booktopia as well. If you support the Aussie booksellers, that would be great. Yeah, as well. Anywhere that sells books. Okay. And the podcast, I have to plug the podcast. Head to the Female Investor podcast too. Weekly awesome content and interviews.
Okay. All right, Kate Hill, Advisable, author of The Female Investor, alongside Nicola McDougall. Thanks for taking some time out to talk to us about that, and good luck with it. I'm sure it's going to do particularly well.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Okay.